Maybe it's time we set a little trap for Crystal Cove's knob stealer.
I second that emotion, Fred, but I just watched Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, and what the hell did I just watch? So how was it? In short, it was below average. Kind of incoherent, with striking visuals and an interesting alien world, an over 2-hour movie that left me losing the will to live. And heavens, is that name a mouthful, so from here on out, I'm going to call it Amptwork. Amptwork is a story entirely unbound by logic, grounding or stakes. And in that way, Amptwork is very much like trying to learn quantum theory, where the more you learn, the more it feels like you understand less. Amptwork feels like a week-long bender in a hall of mirrors, and at 2 hours 5 minutes long, it also feels very bloated, and at the same time is, if anything, also hurried and overstuffed. And it's not the cast's fault. I like most of the cast, and they're all capable actors. There's just very little for them to work with in Amptwork. Michelle Pfeiffer could do this role in her sleep. She barely even has to do any emotional range, and having her in this film is like doing the school run in a Ferrari. Peyton Reed is back as director of Amptwork, so it's the same guy who did Ant-Man 1 and Ant-Man and the Wasp, so make of that what you will. It is a problem that Amptwork can't really stand alone as a film. It's so dependent on having watched the other films and series. It doesn't really establish relationships between many of its own characters. Ant-Man's relationship with Hank Pym is never defined in this film, so you better have watched Ant-Man 1. You better have done all the homework, and if you have, you will be rewarded with understanding what an exquisite mess this film is. I have just finished a review for Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, and at this point I'm inclined to say that Mystery Inc. was better written than Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, and this is for an over 2-hour Disney film, with a reported budget north of $200 million. The film starts with a flashback that the film does not deign to even tell the audience is a flashback, so if you didn't watch the previous films, you'll be asking, who the hell is Michelle Pfeiffer playing in this film, and where is she and what's she doing? And if you did watch the previous films, you'll be wondering why she's there when she escaped there in the last movie. If you didn't see Janet Van Dyne, the original Wasp, escaping from the quantum realm in a previous film, good luck working out what's going on. And if you did, you'll still be confused because her character looks the same age in the current time in the film as she does in the flashback. The whole film has a wonderful sense of equality. If you're new to the franchise or a dedicated viewer, you'll be left equally confused either way. In the flashback, set in the very alien-looking quantum realm, Janet saves a guy called Kang who crashes his ship there, and if you haven't watched Loki or read the comics, this will mean absolutely nothing to you. We then cut away to spend some time in the normal life of Ant-Man with his now grown-up daughter. Hank Pym, Hope Van Dyne and Janet Van Dyne are all together, and I have no idea if Scott and Hope are even still a couple. The film is in too much of a hurry to even tell the audience. We are told that Hope Van Dyne is now girl bossing with a new stupid haircut, and who the hell cut Evangeline Lilly's hair? That's not okay. Cutting off that beautiful hair is not okay. Meanwhile, we're told she is running Hank Pym's company and curing almost every ill in the world, while Scott is taking it easy. The group all have a go at Scott for bringing up that he saved the world. Yeah, he may have done that, but what has he done for them lately? Ant-Man's daughter thinks he's not been doing enough to help the world, so she has been experimenting in secret with Hank and Hope to make a probe to go to the quantum realm, where Janet, the original Wasp, was trapped for 30 years. They at no point bothered to tell Janet, who could have warned them, that they were putting every universe in the multiverse in great peril by doing so. When they show this to Janet and Scott, Janet panics and immediately tries to turn the probe off, but it's too late. A portal opens and sucks all of them into it. This is 11 minutes or so into the movie and came pretty much out of nowhere. Get used to that because it's a theme throughout this entire film. They all find themselves dragged into the quantum realm where Janet Van Dyne was imprisoned for 30 years. They've all been shrunk to a now minuscule size, far smaller than an atom. And I mean, let's be honest, it's all bollocks, isn't it? How small are they even supposed to be now? If they are comparable in size to a photon, how would any of their eyes work? They're now shrunken human eyes designed entirely to catch photons. How and what are any of them breathing? Seeing as they're supposed to be smaller than an oxygen atom. Are all of the atoms and subatomic particles here shrunk too? Is that how it's supposed to work? How is it supposed to work? It's silly, but you just have to either accept the premise and try and enjoy it, or walk out of the theatre. But there are some things here to enjoy. The quantum realm itself I found very visually striking. A weird alien landscape that doesn't have to obey any of our laws. With floating fantastical creatures, it all does have a certain magic to it. And it was the thing I think I liked most about the movie, this strange alien landscape. It certainly wasn't for the humour, which is notably absent in this film. The CGI must have cost a fortune, and sadly not obeying any of our laws presents a problem, because it means that anything can happen at any time in the film, and it frequently does. So the film never really has any stakes. And here's where we get into spoilers. I'm now going to do a very fast rundown of the plot. During the fall, the group are split up. Scott and his daughter end up together, and in the other group, Hope, Hank and Janet. There's a lot of exposition as Scott looks for the others, and his group get captured by strange creatures, rebelling against the now named Kang the Conqueror, the dictator of the quantum realm. The other group are in search of Scott and quickly find that Janet knows her way around. She has a backstory with Kang and the rebels that she's not told to anybody else, and it feels like there are bits missing in the plot, like they've cut long sections for time, so during this section it feels like the groups are teleporting around. It's like Grand Theft Auto 5, where the characters still move when they're off camera, so when it cuts from one group to the other, you have no idea where they are any longer. Scott's daughter wants to help the rebels, and they're fed a red goo that allows them to communicate with the strange creatures, so that's handy. What a stroke of luck that the rebels just had that lying around. Scott, on the other hand, does not want to get involved, arguing that they don't really know what's going on, and he's right. As far as they know, the rebels could be the bad guys, but his daughter says, just because it's not happening to you doesn't mean it's not happening, and then the movie really goes off the rails. Kang's men attack both groups. Scott and his daughter are captured after the rebels get pounded, and the bad guy from the first Ant-Man movie turns up with a massive face and is now working for Kang, and going by the name MODOK, a comic book character with a completely different backstory that I mostly know from old Iron Man comics. Scott is sent to recover an object for Kang, while his daughter is held hostage. Kang wants a power source that he needs in order to escape, that he worked on with Janet before her escape, until she realised Kang was a genocidal monster and blew it up. Kang then built a massive army and took over the quantum realm. Scott gets the item after some references to quantum theory in the story, and him and the Wasp are cloned 1,000,000 times, and Kang steals it but doesn't return Scott's daughter anyway. There's then a massive and overly long final battle with repeated Deus Ex Machinas. Scott's daughter escapes captivity and releases Kang's prisoners, then calls the rebels and asks them to attack Kang too. Ant-Man turns up to Kang's base and goes giant, which is something he frankly could have done at any point really, and stamps on most of Kang's army. So he's winning until the tide turns and Ant-Man starts to get overwhelmed by the sheer number of enemies. Then the rebels arrive, and also the Wasp, and that turns the tide back again. Then Kang comes out and is too powerful, and that turns the tide again, and this is starting to feel like watching WWE wrestling. Then Hank arrives from nowhere with a massive army of hyper-evolved sentient ants that evolved off camera and developed, in Hank Pym's words, a socialist society that we could learn a lot from, and that turns the tide again. But Kang is still too strong and turns the tide back until Kang gets overwhelmed by the ants, and MODOK, who has switched sides after Scott's daughter grew big, hit him and told him to stop being a knob.
Maybe it's time we set a little trap for Crystal Cove's knob stealer.
And that turns the tide again. Kang then tries to use the item to run, and there's a final battle. All the good guys get a portal home and Kang gets imploded and the rebels are free. But not before Kang told Scott that he needed to get free or the multiverse would be destroyed. So now Ant-Man can bask in victory and the very real probability that he tried to do something good and instead has destroyed the entire of reality. So that was Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, and there's 2 hours of my life I'll frankly never get back. Now I'm off to do something more productive with my time, like watching more Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated.
Those look good. A big salty clam would sure go great with this heat.